How's it going, guys and geeks? Welcome back to the Geek Critique Show. My name's Dakota, and there was a huge plot hole in Spider-Man Homecoming. You probably noticed it if you have been following our MCU timeline or have been following the MCU in general. Where do I even begin? I think I need a drink. Okay. Spider-Man Homecoming claims that it takes place 8 years after the Battle of New York, which was the final battle with the Chitauri invasion at the end of Avengers. Now, established canon claims that the Battle of New York occurred on May 4th, 2012, which is the date that film came out. Now, I say established canon, and that's because in the shows, the Marvel shows, they have mentioned that that is the date that battle happens, but is that actually to be believed as canon? And until this date, yes, that was the perceived canon, that was perceived fan wisdom, and after Fury's Big Week, we can realistically assume that most of the films in the MCU take place around the release date that they are given. So this is going to be an interesting conversation that we're going to be having. Does Spider-Man take place in 2016 or 2020? Now, we know Civil War takes place in 2016 for a number of reasons. Besides the fact that the director, Joe Russo, has mentioned that, Kevin Feige has also mentioned that, Scott Derrickson has also mentioned that his film, Doctor Strange, takes place in 2016, and it takes place a little after, or his, being Doctor Strange takes place a little after Civil War, and Civil War takes place around May, which is, one of the films that comes out, and release date is basically established timeline. So what Spider-Man Homecoming is trying to say is either that Spider-Man and Civil War and Doctor Strange and all those films actually take place in 2020, or Avengers takes place a lot earlier than we thought. Now, in the films, there is no explicit mention that the Avengers takes place in 2012. Let's start there, because that's important. Many fans have since speculated and perceived fan knowledge isn't necessarily true canon. It does become true headcanon to many, like myself, who've created the MCU timeline several times at this point, or recreated the MCU timeline several times. But this is the first time that we're getting any mention that this could potentially have been far before 2012. 2016 minus 8, that would be 2008. That's the same year that Tony Stark revealed that he was Iron Man. It's the same year that Fury's Big Week took place. Is that also the same year that the Battle of New York takes place? Well, that's kind of what they're getting at. If that's the case, that's a lot. That's a really busy year, 2008. So let's go back and let's actually look at this timeline. This is the only true official timeline that Marvel has ever actually revealed to us. And this is where they detail the exact event order in which Fury's Big Week takes place. But we're going to start the timeline not all the way to the left, but about 9 months BIM. And BIM stands for Point of Origin. I am Iron Man. That's when Tony Stark revealed to the world that he is Iron Man. So 9 months before Iron Man is when Tony Stark is kidnapped by the Ten Rings organization. Now, if I Am Iron Man takes place in 2008, and 9 months prior to that he gets captured, we can realistically assume that that previous 9-month span took place in 2007. So let's just push that to, maybe May of 2007, maybe April. And let's call the end of Iron Man, pretty early in the 2008 year. Now, 6 months later is when Fury's Big Week starts, and as you guys probably already know, that's when The Incredible Hulk takes place. That's when Iron Man 2 takes place. That's when Thor, the first film, takes place, and that's also when Steve Rogers is pulled out of the ice. So a lot happens in that week, and it's very convoluted, and it's a nightmare for people like me who are trying to, put these films in chronological order. But now it's a little bit more confusing with Spider-Man Homecoming, so let's just try to understand it all once and for all. After Fury's Big Week, we have a period called Before the Avengers on this official timeline that was released back in 2012. This was way before Avengers had even come out. So What does this mean? We assumed previously that Avengers took place 4 years after Fury's Big Week. Now, Spider-Man Homecoming is claiming that it takes place several months after Fury's Big Week, that it actually takes place in 2008, which also happens to line up with Peter Parker's age. Now, if you remember, there was a kid in Iron Man 2 that Tony Stark saved at the Stark Expo. That kid, it's just been revealed, or recently it's been revealed, that that is Peter Parker, that Tony Stark actually saved.
Nice work, kid.
He was about 7 in the movie, now he's 15 in Spider-Man Homecoming. So that fits the established timeline, and that's why this also works as a film that, you know, lands in 2016. Spider-Man Homecoming lands in 2016. There's other stuff to add to that that makes that apparent. Like I mentioned, quotes from Scott Derrickson, Kevin Feige, and Joe Russo. In film, the Vision actually claims that the events in Civil War took place 8 years after the I Am Iron Man period. So that too is established to be 2008. I'm trying to understand this as well as you guys are. This clearly is not a mistake. This is the first time that this has ever been put into film. Kevin Feige wanted us to know when the Avengers took place. Clearly it's been bothering him for many years that we've got it wrong, and he's clearly needed that to be made clear in this film. What does that mean for the overall MCU? Not much, because the timeline, the overall chronological order of things doesn't change one bit if you think about it. It would pretty much only affect the things in Fury's Big Week, but that doesn't affect it at all because it still occurs after. So is there a chance that Spider-Man Homecoming got it wrong? Not likely. Not likely. This was a film very, very closely guided by Marvel Studios, if not entirely written and produced by Marvel Studios. I mean, we know it was produced by Sony, but the direction and everything was entirely Marvel Studios from the get-go. Kevin Feige ran the whole show. He knew this was going to happen. He knew this is going to be a controversial topic, but he put it in there anyway. Now, let's talk about some other film dates that are in some of the films. You may have seen in our latest MCU video that Doctor Strange does indeed take place in 2016 based on film props, but now we have to question a few of the film props that are in other films. Iron Man 3 that has a newspaper that declares December 2013 to be the date that that film takes place. And while the film does take place in winter, at least in some part of it, we know it also takes place about 6 months after the Avengers. That doesn't necessarily make much sense. Likely it takes place early 2009 at that point. Now, what have the Avengers been doing since then? I really don't know. I'm sure there are plenty of adventures that they don't actually talk about that will probably get answered in Damage Control whenever that comes out. We'll probably learn a lot more about the interactions and the villains that have been popping up in the MCU since then. Who knows, though? I don't know, guys. I'm trying to wrap my head around this. It's hard for me to swallow, being that I've been mapping this chronology for many years now. I'm happy that they are telling us the truth about the dates. It's been established in the TV shows that this takes place on May 4th, 2012, the Battle of New York, that is. It's likely that the TV shows got it wrong, that they never actually asked Kevin Feige, and they assumed, like us, like the fans, that it took place on release date, which would be a very rational thing to believe. Now, this would entirely retcon that notion, being that it is a film, and films take precedent over the TV shows, as we know, and then the TV shows over the one-shots, and the one-shots over the comics, and so on and so forth. It's something that you have to take with a grain of salt. Please don't be angry with my rationalizing any of this. I don't think this is a mistake by Sony. I don't think it's an oversight by Marvel. I think this is intentional. I think this is truly when Avengers is set to take place. Whether that makes sense, I don't know. A lot of you guys didn't believe that Doctor Strange could have taken place in 1 year. I explained it very thoroughly in my latest MCU video, but still, a lot of people don't necessarily believe that to be the case. Now we have to also consider that Avengers takes place in 2008. Okay. for those curious if this changes anything in the chronology, don't worry, it does not. It does not change a single thing in the MCU chronology. You're good. Continue following the MCU timeline video that I have going forward. We are on 2.1. This is probably an addendum to that, but I'm not going to be changing the timeline until Thor Ragnarok comes out in November, so that we know a little bit more about some of the TV shows that are coming out, like Inhumans and such. But yeah, this is just a little heads up for you guys. We do have a review of Spider-Man coming out soon, so do check that out and follow if you don't already. So thanks guys, have a good one.